Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about capers and how sometimes they work and sometimes, you fall into a pit.
Is that a metaphor?
Onto some spikes. It's a metaphor for life.
We haven't... What's your feeling on the caper genre?
Oh, I love a caper.
I love a caper, too. Have we covered any capers other than last week's?
Well, we've definitely talked a lot about how we love the caper side of the show.
I don't think we've done just
Walter and Misty get into their caper mode.
But yeah, I don't think we've done just a straight caper movie.
Well, we'll see. I'm Jodie.
I'm Andrea.
And we are doing a little denouement, a little
Oh, fancy.
Look back. Yes, we're doing a little for Lottie, for her love of French.
Ouais. Grand denouement.
That's all.
D'accord. On y va.
No idea. I took Latin. But yeah, we are going to kind of wrap up season 3 of Yellowjackets, talk about some stuff that we didn't quite understand or know when we recorded the last episode because it was so close to the finale. We're gonna give Andrea her moment for Freud and the uncanny. I'm so excited.
I think it's going to be helpful. Before
I can't wait. I'm
was
legitimately excited.
Before I thought it was just going to be fun, and as I was working through it this week, I think it might also be helpful. Which is nice.
I mean, you've indulged my Charlotte Perkins Gilman obsession with the yellow wallpaper and the giant wisteria. So, I can't wait.
Absolutely not an indulgence. I had a blast, and I think our listeners at the time did too.
Oh, this is like the best part.
Welcome, new listeners, of which I think we've had a few over the last couple of weeks. I have a feeling this episode is going to be pretty indicative of what we really are going for here on the Watchers Pod.
This you'll know if this is going to stay your vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I'm excited for that. And we're also going to talk about what's coming up in the off season. We've got some fun plans. So if you are kind of missing your weekly Yellowjackets, which we will be as well, deep dive into pop culture references, we got you covered.
Absolutely.
We got you covered. So I think we decided we should start with almost like picking up where we left off, like the things that we were a little confused by or that we missed that have been clarified by interviews with the stars, the directors, things like that over the last week or so.
That's right.
And the big one for me, and I've noticed for a lot of other people, I am not alone in this,
is who was braiding Shauna's hair. Is that the big one for you? Because as the person who monitors our emails,
yes,
a lot of folks reaching out about who's braiding Shauna's hair. Okay, we're going to get into this for real, the show in general, but I do think this is important because we were joking about who would be braiding Shauna's hair, and oftentimes people talk about whether this show, I shouldn't say oftentimes, there have been some complaints that this show is not, paying as close attention to its, to the details of itself as it maybe should be.
Yeah.
But we know who's braiding Shauna's hair because it's literally happening in the background.
Which neither of us noticed.
No, I totally missed it. A few of our emails seem to think it was Hannah, which is so depraved. But I went back and watched this morning, actually, and it is Misty. You can see she's wearing that, leather seat jacket thing. But it's just hard to tell because she's from the side and she's pretty layered up. But I'm almost positive it's Misty, which makes a kind of sense and is who we speculated.
I think it's so funny because one thing I did not say on mic, but I thought was I bet Misty had a lot of dolls and braided a lot of doll hair.
Well, and like I said, we got enough.
And then we got an email about it.
Well, we got more than one, but so thank you to all of you eagle-eyed watchers. But the one I really want to share is, oh no, hold on. This one actually came in as an Apple Podcast review, which is
that's right.
Now my new favorite way for people to send us their thoughts on the show, because it's really fun to have the rating, but to see it just makes me really happy when I see things like, so this is from Starling 103. I have some thoughts about Shauna's braids in episode 10 of season 3. When Akila's telling Jen, Melissa, and Mari that she has an idea to initiate a hunt, you can see Misty braiding Shauna's hair in the background. We see Shauna with a few different style of braids in the episode. A classic French braid as well as a fishtail braid. Thank you for that attention to detail. Yeah. I'm convinced that Misty had a collection of American Girl dolls back home that she used to practice her hair braiding on.
See? Same fucking thought. I did not say this, but I swear to God, I had that thought. Not American Girl dolls, because that's a little after my time. I'm old, but
I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah, no, I didn't have American Girl dolls. I had Cabbage Patch Kids.
So I had, this is so good, because I was on the cusp. I had both. Well, hold on. I didn't have American Girl dolls because my family didn't have money. But I had all of the books, and I used to, this is so sad, I used to cut out the pictures of the dolls and their accessories from the catalog. And I was Kirsten she's a Swedish doll, and as a child with Scandinavian roots, she meant a lot to me.
Yeah, no, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, this was after my time. I had Cabbage Patch Kids. I had 2 of them. We didn't have money either. This was like, I think that the reason my mom told me that Santa Claus didn't exist, which I knew in my heart, but was insisting that I didn't know.
Right, yeah.
Because she couldn't get me a Cabbage Patch Kid for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I was like, but Santa can do it. And she was just like, this isn't real.
I know you and I have feelings about our mothers, but there's actually, I think that's the responsible thing to do, than to think that the magical man who can do anything decided not to bring you something.
Right.
Even if it did, kind of like, I'm sure that is like a real pivotal moment in your childhood innocence.
I certainly still remember it.
Yeah. She was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there, but I think that probably is the responsible choice.
Because I was in the perfect demographic for like the craze when it was like moms knocking each other over in Toys R Us to get to the small pile that they had.
Right, right.
And so I couldn't get one for Christmas. I did eventually get 2 over time, but
I had a few. It is, having divorced parents helps with guilt presence. So
absolutely,
but we didn't have American Girl doll money. So
I knew someone who had like a homemade version of a Cabbage Patch Kid. Like someone's mom made them like a homemade one, which
out of a cabbage.
It was an actual doll.
Oh, okay,
out of cloth, but
makes more sense.
I remember thinking it was very cool and very sad at the same time because it was like, oh, you can't have a real one. Mm-hmm. Like, so anyway. I also thought that maybe Misty had a bunch of dolls and had braided their hair. So that's really funny.
It makes so much sense.
But this is not the mystery that I was referring to.
Oh, okay. My bad.
The mystery that I was referring to was who was in on what and when.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, because it was confusing, I was not the only one confused. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were confused. And so...
something else we've gotten a handful of emails about with people clarifying. So thank you to all of you for being... also, again, thoughtful, careful watchers. We do our best. We
try. Again, it was we recorded 24 hours after the episode aired. We don't get screeners, so it was like we were trying with everyone else in real time to figure it out. So there was a really great interview with Nia Sandaya done by Caitlin K Fung, KFUNGGG on YouTube. I know her from her just showing up on my TikTok feed a lot. I really like her videos. She explains things very clearly. Anyway, in this interview, Nia clarifies a few things about the plans that were going on. And for those of you that aren't like Reddit deep divers and have been wondering kind of what the fuck, basically there's 3 plans happening. There's like 3 schemes at once. The first one is Akila, Melissa, Mari, and Jen, right? This is the instigation of the hunt. Akila spurring it on by poisoning her animals. And the plan in that scheme is for one of them to kill Shauna so that they can kind of cut the head off of the beast and try to revert to some sort of like semblance of normalcy, the desire to go home, all of that, right? There is a deleted scene that I think would have clarified this for us. Of the 4 of them chopping wood and making a plan.
A scene of them making a plan together probably would have
helped us know they were making a plan. Yes. Yeah. But so what we know about that deleted scene is, and this is also from an interview with Teen Jen. So in this scene that we missed, they're chopping wood. Mel actually instigates the idea, which I think is interesting because she's the one that can't follow through with killing Shauna when she has the opportunity.
And also, my guess is it is about rescue and going home, but also
about
much
taking
about
out Shauna.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. In the show itself, we get a tiny bit of this scene, which is when Akilah says, I know what to do in terms of like spurring the hunt and killing the animals. But the rest of that scene is Mel bringing it up, Mari basically like them kind of hesitating, I guess, about who's going to be the one to actually take out Shauna, and Mari very easily volunteering for that role and being like, yep, I got it.
Hell yeah.
So, you know, it's sort of like there's so many interesting like parallels that's having that scene would have shown us, right? Because Mari's the one who dies, but she's the one who was like gung-ho to, you know, take her out. Mel instigating it and then not being able to follow through. There's a lot of really cool stuff that would have given us. Later on, I want to talk about an interview with, or just quickly bring up an interview with Ben Seminoff, who directed the penultimate episode of the season, because he mentions, I can just say it now, he basically mentions that there's always so much that gets left on the cutting room floor in this show, and how hard that is to kind of, how hard that can be to kind of tie everything together. Which obviously, but this is one of those scenes I think that like we kind of missed having in terms of the understanding of what was going on.
Especially with a show where so much is always happening and we're cutting timeline to timeline. It can be hard to fill in blanks that you might otherwise not have struggled to fill in on some other show.
Right. And I mean, they're in a way banking on the close watching that happens of this show to kind of fill in those gaps. And I think we kind of got there, but just the exact breakdown of who was involved is maybe not as clear as if we'd seen the four of them just like for a hot second together plotting.
Exactly, yeah.
But so that plan was, you know, Akilah spurs on the hunt by poisoning the animals. Mari will take out Shauna during the hunt. There was apparently some hesitation in the group about like, well, we are setting this up so one of us may end up drawing the card, you know, but the goal was never for that person to actually get killed. The goal was for them to, you know, distract, pull people apart, take out Shauna.
It's so, I am fascinated to think of what would have happened.
I know.
Not from a show standpoint, really, because of course we know Shauna doesn't die, but just in like an alternate universe version where the plan did work out, how everybody else would have reacted.
And so the thing I think that confused people a little bit was when Akilah and Lottie are talking, and Lottie says that must have really hurt when she was talking about taking out the animals. But Nia says like that wasn't at all indicating that they were plotting together. She described that line as Lottie's like know-it-all and all-seeing personality, just seeing what seeing what Akilah had done.
That's what one of our listeners emailed, that they thought, first of all, that Lottie didn't know. Their speculation maybe, and I'm not sure how I feel about this. I'm, as usual, open to anything as a possibility for the most part, but that it's more of a possibly a vision. This is from Sophia in Central Jersey, a real place.
Nice.
The conversation between Akilah... me and my Yellowjackets pod have a theory we really want to share with you. The conversation between Akilah and Lottie in the cave is a vision. One, the part of the cave where they are at is where the visions usually happen. Right. Two, Lottie appears so shortly later in the next scene. How would she have gotten back from the cave? And three, Akilah never comes back because she dies in the cave, which is...
Right.
I'm of two minds. We know Lottie is capable of murder. And that's what we've been speculating, because we see Akilah pick up the rock but then not return. So it seems like somebody has died. But there's also something interesting about Akilah dying still at Lottie's hand in a way.
Right.
Because she's the one who has been encouraging her to go get high in the caves.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm interested in either version of those. But yeah.
I also really want Aquila to survive, especially after watching this interview with Nia, and how much like love and care she has for Aquila. It just really kind of broke my heart at the idea that this might be the end. And also, I mean, obviously they don't know anything at all about what could be coming in a season 4, but she seemed pretty positive on the idea that somehow Aquila gets out of the cave, and that we just haven't seen the end of that story yet.
Yeah, well, and especially if it turns out that Sophia and her Yellowjackets pod, I think she means pod as in group. Though Sophia, if you do have a Yellowjackets podcast, let us know what it is. I'm always interested to hear what other people are thinking, especially now that the season's over. I can listen to everybody talk about anything.
I know.
So if something like that is the case, that lends even more to the possibility that Aquila doesn't necessarily die in the cave if there wasn't really a confrontation between her and Lottie in the first place.
Yeah, totally. So fingers crossed for a season 4 with an alive Aquila. While we're talking about that interview, I just want to mention a couple other quick things before I move on. One, it was a great interview. We should link it in the show notes because they asked a lot of questions that I think have come up in the community that loves this show but looks at it through a critical lens. So she mentioned there was a really funny TikTok about how Aquila's hair is perfectly in locks in this season versus in a natural style like it was last season. And apparently that was actually Nia's suggestion, because she normally keeps her hair in a protective style a lot of the time, and was thinking about what if it were her actually out in this situation, what she would do. And she said she wouldn't want to be dealing with her hair and she would keep it probably in braids or locks. And so they brought someone in to do the locks for her. And so I love that was sort of a Nia decision that they went along with. Mm-hmm. And then I also she mentioned how much she hopes that she has more scenes with Ty and how much she loved the scenes where she and Ty interact. Yeah. And that she specifically said, two black girls in this situation might, kind of gravitate towards each other.
Right.
And that she sees Aquila and her relationship to Ty as thinking of Ty almost like a big sister, or like sweet. a strong mentor person who's in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Aquila is much more passive and more observing from the sidelines and seeing where she should act and not act.
Well, and then when she's mourning the loss of her animals, that Ty is the
first person. Yeah,
right. Of course,
exactly.
That's gonna encourage that sort of feeling.
So we also would love to see more. We've mentioned this before. We'd love to see more scenes with the two of them together. So yeah. There was also some speculation online about someone named Evan Johnson. Basically, there was a rumor going around that there was an adult Aquila cast because of an Instagram post by Evan Johnson, I believe is his last name. Turns out that's a crew member that just was really excited for the Aquila storyline, made a post, and it kind of went nuts. Everybody was like, oh my God, adult Aquila cast. And nobody confirmed or denied it because they didn't want to put their finger on the scale.
Right.
But it's just a crew member that's there all the time.
Right.
So
also stuff where it'll be it says Teen Aquila, but then we also have
Teen everyone,
Teen Mari in particular, who we now know is no longer with us.
But so that's kind of the main plot that we weren't totally sure who was in on. The other one we do know about, obviously, is Van and Ty's plan to rig the card draw so that Hannah gets the queen. Mm-hmm. And then the third group, Nat, Van, and Misty, to distract Shauna and get Nat to a place where she can use the sat phone.
Right. And so that leaves Lottie out of any planning. Mm-hmm. It leaves Ty out of any planning. And it leaves Shauna out of any planning, right?
Correct.
Those three.
Yeah.
Which I think is,
Yeah. And so Nia also basically said that from what she knows, none of the plans were aware of the other plans. That it was sort of three independent things happening at once.
Which makes sense with the way these girls, you kind of need to be very careful.
But it makes it really clear to me that, we talked about how in the opening in the pilot, we were led to believe that it was this group of feral women and all of them were in on this. And then we talked about how we realized that through this finale of season 3, that actually a lot of the women had another agenda or weren't in on the hunt. Now it turns out that, like, I think most of them didn't want the hunt at all, except for Shauna and Lottie. Like, because before I realized how many people were involved in this first plan, that it was all 4 of them, I was like, well, maybe like half the people really wanted the hunt to happen. It seems like very few of them actually wanted it to happen, mostly Shauna and Lottie. Which
I feel better about. It seems like some people are disappointed that
show... I'm much happier this way.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit last week. Yeah. Some people are disappointed that the show isn't just about, like, feral women gleefully eating each other. Though, you know, sometimes it is. And I also don't want to pretend like I haven't had fun with those moments. But it's just so much more interesting and so much more complicated to see it play out this way.
Yeah, I think to me, it goes too far into the, like, unrealistic side of things if there isn't anyone that's like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. And also, like, another bit of commentary I had seen was like, why don't they try to take out Shauna? Why don't they try to take out Shauna? Well, now we know they did try to take out Shauna.
Right, exactly.
But it didn't work.
Right.
And it's also interesting to think about that, how that relates to Mel's character. I think we might have mentioned this, but the fact that she's unable to kill Shauna in the moment and kills Van in the finale, but also the fact that, like, she was in on this plan to kill Shauna, but it was supposed to be Mari doing it. But then Mari pulled the card and had to run.
Right.
So she was unable in the moment to commit that act. So, yeah.
Man, there's so much to say about all of this, and we have so much to cover.
I know. I think there's another scene I want to kind of not explain, explore. Thank you. That's the right word. A little bit based on interviews and stuff that I've seen. And that is the Ty's battle with Ty in the dream space.
Yes, please.
Because you rightly guessed that there was a lot more to this that was filmed. And that has been confirmed by many people.
Release it. I want to see it all. I want the whole knockdown, drag out. Yeah. Ty and Ty fight.
Yeah. So what Tawny Cypress says is, she says a lot of good stuff in this interview, actually, about how she thinks about Ty, but specifically about this scene. She says, the parts of this season that got cut, I'm so mad because I got so messy doing that scene. I had to force myself to eat mud, okay? It all got cut. I was basically stuffing mud down my face. I did all of that and it got cut out, but whatever. Which you can hear in Tawny's voice.
Totally.
But then she says, I do think the clear winner is real Ty. I think you're going to get to meet yet another version of this character next season. That's my prediction. She's remembering everything. She's not going to forget anything anymore. She's going to remember all the fucking shit and just go.
Freud.
Right.
I love the idea that we haven't really seen a full Ty.
Yeah.
And I keep joking that she's been integrated, but, like, one that has really collapsed that protection that she's put up.
Yeah.
And that fight, that, like, whatever, doesn't really mean as much if other Ty did win out. It doesn't it really doesn't make sense for that to have been the case. And it's so much more heartbreaking for the Ty who now remembers, who really is here and present, to have just finally gotten back again. Not that she wasn't Ty all along, but
well, she speaks to this too
at the moment of losing Van.
Yeah, she speaks to that a little bit more too. She says about how Ty is sort of compartmentalizing this part of her that she can exploit to do things she doesn't want to do and take responsibility for. You can get lost in that. You can lose yourself. You can become so much of that you're not you anymore. Honestly, I don't think we've ever even met Taissa. The first season, she had this candy shell life. The second season, she was torn to shreds and building herself back up. And third season, she was just doing whatever the fuck she wanted. So, like, I love the idea that we haven't seen the real Taissa yet.
Yeah, it's been Freud, id and ego in a battle this whole time.
Are we going to get super ego Ty?
We'll find out.
That's great. So, yeah, I think that it's nice to hear not only her say that, but the director of that episode sort of confirmed that in the interview, Ben Seminoff, saying that in his mind, it is good Thai that wins, or real Thai, not good Thai. So yeah, I thought that was great.
It makes the most, for me, narrative sense. It's the most satisfying way for that to play out. So
yeah,
I'm glad that they're not being like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, she says that it would be the two sides coming together. She's ready for revenge. She says she's done forgetting. So look out, Shauna. I
do love the idea that the two Thais coming together to make a whole Thai leads to Thai being ready to kill Shauna.
Being even more dangerous.
Exactly. That rules.
Yeah. Yeah. But he also, so the Ben Seminoff interview, he clarifies this too. And he says, like, when she wakes up and says she's gone, she's saying that she's vanquished bad Thai. I think what she ends up saying actually in the episode is, it's me.
Yeah.
But maybe that was a different version they filmed. That she's been operating under bad Thai for the balance of the season. I feel like from the onset, bad Thai was present. If the dream sequence had played out a little bit longer, maybe we would have gotten a stronger sense of that. But I think bad Thai loves Van no matter what. I think they both care for Van. The question is in their execution. The actions they take to support her are different.
Totally.
So, yeah. I'm glad that we got that sort of clarification from both of them, though, because I think that's what we intuited from the scene and what most people did. But it was like, are we right about that? Like, are we missing something? And it turns out we're not.
Well, and I think a lot of people were adding a level of mystery there, or like, not mystery. What's the word I want? That like maybe there was some Yellowjackets deception going on there, where that's what they want you to think, but really it's bad Thai. But
no, they're making us second guess our second guesses.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm glad that we got to see that. Also, one thing I thought was really interesting, Tawny talked about before the season having a conversation with the showrunners and the writers about how she should see this other Thai because it's so much more present now. And like she asked, this different identity, do they have the same memories? And with that, I thought that was a super interesting question. And the answer was yes, she does.
Oh.
And so she said, okay, so I have to build this character and make it make sense to me and not just have it be some weird supernatural thing. I have to be able to explain it to myself. So that's where the conversation started. And with Ty, it's just built off of narcissism. She's the most narcissistic person I've ever met. And how she finds a way to do what she wants without taking any blame or responsibility for it is pretty deviously narcissistic. So like that clarity that like they do share the same memories. They are basically the same person, just like is so... It clarifies some things.
Fascinating that they share the same memories because you really can't excuse anything Ty does then.
No.
Because it would also make a kind of sense that you could explain through a sort of TV logic that not only is other Ty the sort of like fractured identity that does the things that good Ty can't, but that also has the like clearer memory and that the Ty that walks around in the day-to-day has the sort of, a Keela Nugget kind of, like, we're going to get into screen memories at the end of this episode.
Can't wait.
Those kinds of memories.
Right.
Where it's like, well, yeah, that's why they both sort of know what's going on, and you can't let Ty get away with anything now, knowing that.
Well, and there has been a lot of discussion about how much they remember. They had that conversation at Lottie's compound about, like, I think... Melanie Linsky, Shauna says like, something about how little she remembers and how she doesn't want to basically. And so thinking about.
Yeah. She's like, if I repressed.
Right.
Yeah.
So thinking about the fact that like, Ty may have repressed some of these memories, but they are shared by all these pieces of her is super, super clarifying, I think. They also, in that same interview, it was with Christina and Tawny, which I loved.
Perfect.
Somehow the interviewer did not mention that they are both from New Jersey, which was really offensive to me.
Fully offensive.
Fucking Hollywood Reporter nonsense. But basically, the two of them...
Star Ledger would never.
Absolutely. Asbury Park Press, Bergen Records, none of those. They would all mention it. But they asked each of them about their characters, like in more detail, and I thought we got some good stuff. And so Christina Ricci was talking about Misty and adult Misty and how she was approaching it, how her arc this season, because each season has had sort of like a different focus for each of these characters.
Right.
And she said in her conversations with the writers and the showrunners, she says, they described to me that she would be finally realizing that these quote unquote friends of hers are not her friends. And she would finally be really hearing the nasty comments that are made about her. And so she said, throughout the last 2 seasons, I've had a really hard time playing someone who's smart and perceptive, but who never really reacts to any of the absolutely nasty treatment she gets from these other women. It's been hard for me to play those scenes because it was difficult to justify that kind of denial. So they were saying that in this season, Misty would finally be realizing that these people were not her friends and actually reacting. She would finally lose it and not tolerate it anymore and go on a mission that was started by this kind of awakening. Good. So, like, I think we really see that. I think especially the last couple of episodes, we see her really stop taking any shit from anyone. Also, interestingly, she says, season 2 had a lot of comedy for me, and that is more difficult for me and less enjoyable, which is so funny to me because Misty is such a comedic character.
And Christina Ricci has done so many. I think that's one of her great strengths. Is that
I know,
she can
but
do
apparently
both.
it's harder for her.
That's so funny.
She's so good at it, though.
Yeah. I listened to her on Conan's podcast.
Yeah.
He invented podcasts. So his podcast,
right.
She was on recently, and she described herself as being sort of like more flat affect and less, like being harder for people to read her. And I think that's probably true. And I just, it's impossible not to think of Wednesday Addams when she explains that, and that sort of lending itself to the comedy of her in a lot of ways, though I don't know how much of that is true for Yellowjackets. So,
but I do think that, like, one of the things that we love about Misty is she's able to say completely insane things in the most straightforward, realistic, like, tone. And so that does sort of fit with that flat affect thing that she has.
Yeah, because it's not that she's I always think of Misty as like sort of like bright and almost chipper. And then, so I don't think of her necessarily as flat, but but the ability to like kind of like modulate that.
She's very controlled.
Yes, exactly.
She's very controlled. Yeah. I think the last sort of scene clarification that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the plane, because I know that you have had a lot of thoughts about the use of the plane sequence and the not use of it. And so I want to kind of get your reaction to this quote from the director of that episode. So Ben Semenoff, again, this is from a Hollywood Reporter interview, says, "We've seen this plane before. When Lottie died, we didn't get to see Simone and Courtney Eaton on a plane. But when Natalie died, we did see Julia Lewis and Sophie Thatcher on the plane together." And he says, I had this...
And isn't Lottie there? Isn't young Lottie on the plane with them?
With Nat.
With Nat. Yeah.
Okay. He says, I had this conversation the other day about Lottie. We weren't present for Lottie's death. Then this is what you were thinking about, too. He says, as an audience, we didn't get to experience it. For Nat, we were experiencing it in real time. She dies, and then we go into that space with her, and the same with Van. He says, but as a viewer, I do feel cheated for not seeing Lottie on the plane. And he also mentions that the reason the planes look different is because, specifically with Van's plane, it's about establishing period and a bit referencing like her being a pop culture and movie buff as well.
That everybody's plane is a little different.
A little different, yeah. He says there's those 3 lights with the projector. It was about establishing period. Maybe there was no need to see anything like that in Nat's experience because this plane isn't real, right? It's some sort of interpretation of the way that they're getting from one plane of existence to another. That's my interpretation, at least. I don't think she's going to be on that plane for the rest of eternity. Thank God.
Yes.
So I think some of our own personality has to go into that. If the common denominator is that they all take a plane, maybe each of their planes look a little bit different. So,
you know what I have to ask?
What?
What's your plane look like? What's different about your plane?
Oh my God. Wow. That's a really intense question. And that's like, what is the essence of your character boil down to?
Right. Because with Van, it's a screen. It's watching. Right. It's consuming a...
Yeah.
Of course, somebody so obsessed with movies would see her life as a movie.
Okay, this is going to be extremely dark is the wrong word. Maybe too revealing. It would be piles and piles of photographs that I've taken over my lifetime and other photographs that other people have taken. But yeah, it would just be like the inside of the plane would look like a serial killer was flying in it because it would just be photos pinned to every possible surface.
This is the coolest. Not my question to you specifically. It sounds like I'm about to compliment myself. I'm not. This is the coolest. Yourself. But I'm not. I mean, I'm fine to do that. But I'm not in the moment. This is the coolest thought experiment ever, because what I didn't ask you, but sort of what you gave me and what is happening on that plane is like, how do you organize your life, but your memories? And it makes so much sense that yours would just be, again,
stacks of still images. Yeah. Versus like, old-timey video clips playing on a projector.
Right, exactly.
That's so
fascinating.
Funny. What about you? What would your plane be?
Mine is like an old curiosity shop.
Ooh.
And so it's like what I was picturing as I was thinking about it is like an old like bottle episode of a TV show where they're in the attic packing up boxes and going through the different items and being like, oh, that reminds me of the time. And so I love that. Lots of little knickknacks just kind of like strewn about the plane.
Like you were a crow and all the shiny things you've collected.
100% like a crow. Yeah. Some sort of magpie.
I think that's perfect.
Or raccoon.
Yeah. Wow. That went surprisingly deep.
We did a great job. I wasn't expecting that.
For our listeners, what would your plane look like?
Oh, please. Oh my God. I've never wanted to know anything more other than your Slurpee flavors. Thank you to those of you who have let us know. A lot of Coke Slurpee heads in here, which I think
have been craving one since we started talking about it.
Yeah, please let us know what your plane looks like.
That's like a really sort of interesting litmus test.
I love that we've been getting all of these emails because it really is starting to feel like a conversation, which is what I've wanted all along, because we got from Rose, who sent us an email that ties into this, and I wonder what you think about this. Okay. And it also kind of, what you just read about the plane kind of clarifies this as well. So Rose sent a really thoughtful long email working through all of this, but the part I want to focus on is talking about Lottie's scene in the morgue as opposed to getting a plane scene. I've been a firm believer this season that the supernatural stuff isn't real, but the reoccurring afterlife scenes really make me consider otherwise. To me, the only way to read that Lottie sequence, and the reason they didn't return to it, is because it basically confirms that either Lottie has real premonitions of her death, or that she's in the afterlife, which does kind of make sense, because how do we have access to that? Yeah. If she's not either, if either that's not an earlier premonition we're seeing, or we are, again, with her post-death. It just
because we're not in her point of view when she dies.
Exactly. And
I mean, we're not really in that either. It's a scene that we're watching as a viewer, but like we're much delayed in seeing what actually happened with Lottie's death. We didn't see it at the moment with everyone else.
Exactly. And so Rose is so right. It's really hard to reconcile that if you think about it in any other way. And the reason I have shied away from these kinds of conversations is the loss of it all. People hate.
It's purgatory.
People hate. It wasn't purgatory on Lost.
No, it wasn't purgatory.
I know you know. I just need to remind everybody. It wasn't purgatory even a little bit.
Right.
But any limbo, purgatory, afterlife, especially connected to a plane, it is really hard to talk about. But I did say early on, like maybe one of our first episodes, what if Yellowjackets is lost but good?
But good. Yeah, I do remember you saying that.
I love Lost. So when I say good, I mean like what if they do with Lost what people think Lost is?
Right. And do it well.
And do it well.
Yeah.
Which is I don't think that's what's happening, but it's so hard not to see that now.
I know. I mean, we know, as we've said, like some of the writers specifically Emily St. James, literally is a lost scholar at this point.
Wrote the book on Lost.
Right, literally. So it's not that far-fetched. I think that we don't have enough evidence yet necessarily to know that that's what they're doing, but it is like the way they've done these endings for people certainly leaves a lot of questions that lead to ideas around afterlife and things like that. Like, I mean, literally what Van says to herself about, what is the quote? Oh, where would be the fun in that? Something where, so when Van is talking to herself on the plane, there's this feeling that in the dialogue that this isn't the end, right?
Right. How else do you read the plane scenes if otherwise than some transition to
absolutely? I think that's like really
explicit.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That is what it is.
Exactly. So the quote exactly is from young Van to older Van: surviving this was never the reward. And older Van saying, what does that mean? If this isn't the real ending, then tell me what happens. And then teen Van says, where would be the real fun in that? Mm-hmm. And so that to me reads as like a reference to life after life. Like, it's not like, oh, you're going to be reanimated and come back. Like, you know, there's just this sense of like, who knows what's next kind of.
Yeah. It's so funny because if it weren't for Lost, what I would want, like, I would be thrilled for a show like this that deals in the way you and I have talked about it all along, as being very real and rooted in trauma and all of that. But then also there's some time stuff going on,
right,
and some purgatory stuff going on,
right.
And I love the idea of them taking their metaphorical plane back to 1990 and doing like, and I don't know, not breaking alleys. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I love a time loop. Have we done any time loop stuff?
I don't know.
We just haven't. We've been doing.
Well, we were going to do a whole month of Groundhog Day episodes in February, but then Yellowjackets came out in February.
100%. That was something that we had talked about doing.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like mailing it to myself in a letter so that if anybody else does this, because I'll never be able to, I have it on record that it was my idea to do a Groundhog Day series where you cover Groundhog Day every day in February. And we did have plans to do a shorter version of that.
A once a week version. Yeah.
Man, I love time loop stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's going to be, I mean, God, I hope we have a chance to see more and find out, like, if there is a specific thing they meant by that.
It used to be that shows took a long time to confirm a new season.
Yeah.
And it is just, I think the, like, you know, Severance confirmed season 3 2 seconds after season 2, and I think it's stressing people out.
It is.
I haven't lost hope yet because it is not uncommon for it to take a little while.
And also in interviews with people that would probably have a sense of it. So Melanie Linsky seems pretty gung-ho on the fact that they're going to have a season 4.
People didn't like that Instagram post where she said, if we get a season 4.
Yeah.
So.
But also, I feel like I haven't brought up the Ringer Podcast Network in a minute, but Joanna Robinson, who with Mallory Rubin does their Yellowjackets podcast as well as Prestige TV, and is much more in the industry area of things than we are. Also seemed pretty.
We're Hollywood
We're
insiders.
friends with Ashley Lyle. No, but she seemed pretty positive on that as well. So yeah, we are hoping.
I'm going to continue operating as if until unless.
Exactly. Yeah, right now when you Google season 4, there's just every article. Will there be a season 4 of Yellowjackets?
Right.
So
unsurprising.
The last thing I want to talk about before the last thing I want to quickly mention before we move on to more in-depth sort of esoteric things is just a little note on Melissa. Just because I found a couple interesting things. There was an interview with Jenna Burgess that was posted on YouTube recently. What kind of came out of that for me were two things. One, her feeling about the relationship between Mel and Shauna in the teen timeline. Being that the interest and attraction and all of that was very real, and not that the calculation couldn't have been a part of it sort of subconsciously, but that it was that she was interested in Shauna to start.
Huh. In the way we have talked about this being kind of like a heightened version of how teen girls are.
Yeah.
It does make more sense that she would be so willing to kill her if she feels like her actual, like somebody she actually had feelings for in some way betrayed her, rather than someone she was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But also I think that in that teen mindset, like the fact that this seems to, at least according to the actress that plays her, started with an actual crush, like
that's what
would
I
also
mean.
make it harder though.
Well, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just mean like the feelings being more intense
in
general. So
right.
her feeling even more, betrayed by Shauna's behavior
right.
than if she were just being conniving.
Right. And I think it still makes sense with Melissa in the presence, I was never in love with you thing, because when you're 17, what you think of as love is not what you think of as love in your 40s.
Right.
So,
right.
But then on Melissa in the present, that interview with the director was super interesting. First of all, Melanie and Hilary Swank did all of their own stunts.
Hell yeah.
In that fight scene.
Good for
which
them. I
fucking love.
That rules.
That's so good. Apparently they brought a stunt person in to do a second pass of Melanie throwing the jar of jam, but Melanie's actual throw was better than the stunt person's.
Hell yeah.
I love that so much.
That rules.
Yeah. But the thing that I really noted that he said was the reason for her sending that tape, because we kind of like had a hard time placing, like, is she sincere about letting things go? Is it, what's the reasoning behind doing this thing after 25 years? And this is just his opinion as the director. But he says, I think what happens is that Melissa bottles all this stuff up and at some point realizes that there's this massive void in her life. The danger and excitement of the wilderness is gone, and in order to bring it back, and maybe not knowing exactly how it's going to play out, she pokes the bear. She sends the note and the tape to Shauna and says, let's see what happens. I don't think there's a grand scheme, but the two characters of Shauna and Melissa are quite similar. They're both mothers and caregivers for their family. He says he came in after they established a lot of the home in season 8, so he was limited in things he could add, but he picked the minivan for her because he wanted to parallel those two characters as living similar, essentially boring lives. She's trying to recapture something, not initially knowing what it was, and then faced with this moment where she's potentially about to be killed. In the wilderness, when someone's standing over you with a knife and they don't do it, you take the opportunity to do it. I don't think you go, well, I'm glad that we're friends again.
Right, right.
So
I love that.
Yeah, because these women are stupid. Like,
such a good point, Jodie.
No offense, but they make bad decisions all the time. And sending a tape and a note to the woman who is like the most likely to come after you.
Yeah, it's not just that they're stupid. They are stupid. I want to be very clear. I'm not disagreeing with you. These are stupid women.
And very smart in other ways, but common sense wise, maybe not so much.
Even more than that, they're not self-aware or self-reflective.
Exactly.
So I don't think Melissa thought very much beyond writing the letter and and dropping it off. I think like Sevenoff said, it does seem more of like a, let's just see. I'll just put it out there and what happens,
Yeah, that quote from him, let's see what happens, really kind of resonated with me. I was like, oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense.
Is super kind of understandable for these women who
for these people specifically.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that way of reading that.
It made so much sense to me when I read it,
because it's like it's neither nor, it's both and. It's like
yeah, it's like exactly that. It's both.
That's cool.
So those were the things that I gleaned from lots of interview reading. And I wanted to just kind of because the scenes that were brought up were also scenes that we kind of had speculated on the meaning behind and things like that. So I thought it was interesting to get some of that clarity.
Thank you for exercising your due diligence and being our ethical reporter.
So do we want to go to Freud Corner?
Is it time?
I think it's time. I'm excited. I feel like I'm about to sit down for a nice lecture in my college class, which is my favorite thing.
I have made notes. This is not a lecture.
Where are the slides?
Do
I get a PowerPoint? I want a PowerPoint.
I didn't make any slides. I didn't make a PowerPoint.
That's not very inclusive of you, Andrea, as a professor. People have different learning styles, and we need to be aware of that. Some people learn visually. Some people learn auditorily.
Well, when we get 10 million listeners,
it's 10 now. Okay.
Yeah, I'll launch the Patreon where I'll make slides every week for our podcast.
I can't wait.
But
I love a PowerPoint.
I do too. I mean, I feel like that is one of the things we bonded over early. I love for a PowerPoint.
Agreed.
But I specifically, I don't want this to feel too lectury. I also don't know how into Freud. I think probably some of our listeners, just based on the emails we've gotten, some of this will be refresher, some of this will be brand new. Jodie, feel free to jump in and talk through stuff with me.
Yeah.
Before I even get into it, I want to be so clear. I'm not saying that Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson sat down with their Freud notes. We might get into a little Lacan with their Lacan notes and said like,
oh, a little Lacan too.
Maybe a little.
Oh.
And said like,
any Foucault? Any Panopticon?
I might have a little Foucault in
Little
here.
Foucault? Madison Civilization?
I might have a little Foucault in here.
Oh, this is so exciting.
We'll see where we get. So I'm not saying that they sat down and said, like, let's do a study of the uncanny through Yellowjackets. What I am saying is
I'm looking at my bookshelf to see if I have Foucault's Madison Civilization sitting over there.
I have two disclaimers. One is about why I'm doing this and one is about Freud. So,
okay.
This stuff is human. It shows up. It often does, whether or not intentionally. So I'm not like reverse engineering the writer's room and saying this is why this stuff is here.
No.
But I am saying it's a really good lens to explain why the show feels the way it does. And even like it might explain where some of the like issues viewers have had with the show. Some of them were like some of the like even inconsistencies that you and I have kind of struggled with, like how that can happen on a show like this.
Well, and even without reverse engineering the writer's room, like every visual or otherwise storyteller that has done any historical research or learning about the craft of story is aware of the influence of Freud, the uncanny, like other philosophers, psychologists on the way we understand story and the way that it is told throughout the history of film and TV.
Yeah. And I think like this lens in particular works internally in the show and then also maybe explains a little bit of why the storytelling doesn't always feel super clean to me in a way that I think is really interesting and other people often struggle with. Second, disclaimer, Freud is a shithead. He was a bad therapist. He was a bad psychologist. He is fully a full misogynist. It is not an exaggeration. Like when people say that
he's canceled, but also he's a huge influence on all of culture.
Yeah, that's where it's like the way some people talk about the Bible, where it's like take what you need and leave the rest. That's how I feel about Freud. It's the concepts still hold up when it comes to like literary and critical theory. And what I'm super interested in with Freud is like the way the uncanny gives us language to talk about the stuff that freaks us out, the stuff that haunts us, the stuff that keeps coming back, all of that.
Yeah.
And again, to me, it's not about whether or not the writers intended this.
No, it's in addition to.
Yeah. And
it's like it's another layer.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not an explanation for the show. It's a lens through which to watch the show. So.
Disclaimers given.
Okay. I'm going to give a brief breakdown of the uncanny in general, and then we'll apply it to the show. So it's a term from Freud, an essay he wrote in like 1920 I'll look at my notes. 1919. I was going to say 1920. His essay is called "The Uncanny." The original language, it's unheimlich or unheimlich, which means unhomely. So I think it is so helpful to think of uncanny with that original translation.
I'm so happy already.
Unhomely.
I feel like I'm in my happy place.
I'm so sorry I didn't make you slides. I could probably find some old ones, but they're not Yellowjackets specific. And Jodie, you know what the uncanny is as a feeling, right? Like that something is familiar but not quite right. Mm-hmm. People use it.
I was just going to say they use this term a lot, the uncanny valley, to refer to like as sort of drawn imagery, cartoons, animation, AI, all of that as it starts to approach the line between fake and real in terms of human faces and all of that. That's this uncanny valley they've talked about in film.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing about that is that it's like when you are almost real enough.
Yeah.
That's when it gets
weird.
That's
when it's bad. Yeah, that's when it's creepy.
Almost there, but not quite.
Yeah.
And it makes it weird and wrong. Freud talks about it with stuff like doppelgangers, lifelike dolls, all the stuff that we feel is wrong, but can't always totally say why.
Yeah.
And that's why, right? It's because it's something that is familiar, but wrong.
Yep.
And often the way that like Freud talks about it, more specifically is what happens is it's like, you know, you have a fear in your childhood that you can't totally explain. You repress it, you cover it over, you make a more like adult rationale for it, but then it comes back. And that...
Like a weird ice cream mascot?
Like a weird ice cream mascot, Jodie. Like a weird ice cream mascot, Jodie. For example.
Yes. Yes.
Also super obsessed with eye stuff. Like really obsessed with eye stuff, eye trauma, fear of being watched, fear of losing your eyes. Don't let him take my eyes.
Yeah.
Not being able to trust what you see, all of that. Where he gets annoying is that his claim is that eye trauma, fear of eye stuff is castration anxiety.
Yeah.
It's all dick
Everything
stuff
comes back to dicks
him,
with him, and I'm really over it.
And that women can also have a version of that anxiety. It's a lack. So we'll forget all of that.
Sure.
But so anytime you're watching Yellowjackets and all of the stuff that you and I have been like pinned, and not just you and I don't want to act like we're
No.
but like, what, you know, when we're like, it's weird that they keep showing these shots where it looks like someone is watching them, but we don't know who that's supposed to be. Is it us? And we can't totally pinpoint why that's weird because we don't have any proof that anybody is watching them out there, at least until the frog scientists show up, and that only lasts 30 seconds before someone gets an axe on their head.
Right.
Even the symbol being around everywhere, we don't know what that means, but
the eyes on the trees.
And the eyes on the trees. You mentioned it last week that like there's one for sure that is like the knot in the tree that looks like an eye, which again, similar to, but not quite. And it's like,
but in the opening script, the script for the pilot specifically mentions the eyes, like kind of, I think literally cut into the trees. I think that some of them are meant to be like intentionally put there.
Yeah, so obviously the show is concerned really explicitly with watching and eye stuff, which Freud is obsessed with and which ties directly back to the uncanny. Something else that comes up in that essay is, like I said, doppelgangers, doubling. And he connects it specifically to like separation of like identity from self, ego death, that kind of thing, and it over and over and over again here. Like Ty is the most obvious example, you know, that she has split herself into two and then therefore has no control of who she is and her identity because she's been separated out and kind of created her own double. But it also works if you contrast the teens and the adults.
Yeah.
As two separate kind of splintered identities that we see. I mean, there are a million examples. Even like Lottie is the like wilderness mystic versus adult Lottie as the like wellness guru, and one feeling more like real, or like, I keep wanting to say wild, and that's not quite the word I mean, but more like of the earth, and one being like a fractured kind of weird fake version of that.
Right. Well, and connected to the eye thing, like he mentions in that essay the story of the Sandman.
Yes,
which
100%.
I think is super interesting, which is a tale that parents would tell their children to encourage them to go to sleep. The child must be asleep for the Sandman to put sand in the child's eyes. If they are not asleep, the Sandman will take out their eyes.
Ty, everything about it. Don't take my eyes, but also the like connection with Ty and sleep, and when she is awake for it's all there.
She's awake when she should be asleep.
That's right.
Right? Taking out the eyes.
That's right.
Absolutely. Like that story also has this like interesting, probably intentional double meaning of like when he's talking about the uncanny, part of what he's thinking about is like things that we were afraid of as children and how they affect us as adults, like you said. And the Sandman is one of those stories. Like it's the perfect example that he's using there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And he's got examples like that all throughout the essay, but that's the exact right one to be talking about here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even the way I said earlier, I love time loop stuff. Even the revisiting the past over and over again, the way we watch the show is a kind of revisiting, which in a way is a kind of doubling, a return, a looping back over and over, as opposed to them just moving on, that we keep going back with them.
Right.
And sort of like in that way, it's a kind of haunting, you know what I mean?
Right. And he says about the doppelganger, this totally connects with all of this. He says, mirrors, shadows, guardian spirits with the belief in the soul and the fear of death. The idea of the eternal soul allows us an energetic denial of the power of death. This was the first double of the body. From having been an assurance of immortality becomes the uncanny harbinger of death.
That's right.
So this idea also of like, as the adults pass on, their teen selves interacting with them as this like, an assurance of immortality or a double of the body, like.
But you can only have that assurance of immortality if you're aware of death in the first place.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's so connected in so many ways to every theme that has like really kind of lasted on this show as an underlying idea from the beginning.
That's right. That's totally right.
Also, sorry.
No, go for it. I love it.
So I'm looking right now at this quote on the Freud Museum's website, but it says, through this process, we can see that the nature of the uncanny is entirely subjective, based upon our own experiences, but haunts each of us to varying degrees. And I think that that's so, each of these women is haunted by the uncanny in a specific way, in their own way.
Yeah. And like, this is like a little bit of a joke of like if it's mentionable, it's manageable. Like the more you try to ignore it and press it down and repress it, the more violently it comes back. Ty is a perfect example of that, where she is literally cutting her dog's head off and hiding in her kids' trees and has no memory of it. And as opposed to somebody like Misty or Nat, who seems to have a little bit stronger, oddly, grasp on the world, but have both been the most open to acknowledging what they did in the past.
Yeah. And just reading this, I can't stop thinking about examples in the show, because it says examples of situations. Constant. Yeah. Examples of situations that can provoke an uncanny feeling include inanimate objects coming alive, thoughts appearing to have an effect in the real world, seeing your double, representations of death such as ghosts or spirits, and involuntary repetitions.
Yes.
The uncanny arises when childhood beliefs we have grown out of suddenly seem real. Freud called it the return of the repressed.
That's right.
That's like mic drop. Like
it's all in there.
It is.
And so it's so funny because like on the one hand, that makes me feel almost like I'm more open to the idea of the supernatural existing in the show, but at the same time makes me even less, because I'm like, yeah, but all of that happens because of our psyche. Like it just is so tangled up together. It is astounding how much of it, how much is uncanny in the show, or can works as an example. I even said to you, I sent you a message the other day that was like, even the fucking pit is uncanny or unhomely, because it starts out where the first time they find it, when Ben finds it, it's full of food. It's a connection back to civilization. It's safety. And then the second time, so there's that repetition, it's Mari falls in and breaks her leg. Yeah. So it is even more dangerous. And then it is literally
it kills
covered.
Her.
Well, but before it kills her, it's covered over.
Right.
And then it comes back a third time and it kills her. And that scene is a mirror from the first thing we've seen in that show.
Right.
It is over and over and over again.
Put up the photo of the red string and the bulletin board because it's all there.
It's all there.
It all ties together.
One other thing, and I don't have a ton to say about it. I kept yelling screen memories all season, which is what it sounds like. It's just Freud's coined term for the way our brain protects us from trauma, and it will create a memory that feels real and is a safer version of a truly traumatic memory. So it's possible, when we think about Aquila with Nugget, that's a screen memory in a way, because if we look at the wilderness as their memories of, which we've said, it doesn't feel to us like we're actually in it with them.
Right.
Aquila carrying that dead mouse around, but what we see is a living mouse. Anytime, there's so much where the women talk about how they remember it versus what it really is, and just lends even more to us being like, I don't know that we can trust that we're really seeing what's going on there, as brutal as it often is.
I mean, we're literally seeing events of people's memories on the screen, literally.
And I think that's exactly right. And we've pinpointed proof of that throughout. The film glitch is such a good example of that. But then just to make it really explicit with this show, that pitch deck that's been floating around, and obviously things change. It was supposed to be set in 1975 and 2001.
Right.
So things can shift. But the point of that was in 2001, a few of the survivors agreed to take part in a documentary.
Right.
And so...
Yeah, we brought that up a couple of weeks ago, this idea of the being viewed or being watched, and then the idea of the documentary or the dateline of it all, or the hard copy reference that Ashley made in an interview. This idea of who gets to tell the definitive story, because there's that book that Adam has that's the unofficial story, right? So that's one version. What is the version if we did get sort of a documentary hard copy kind of thing? Who are the people telling the story, and what is their version of it versus what quote unquote really happened, which is that phrase they keep saying over and over again, what really happened out there. And it's we're never going to know what really happened out there.
And that brings me to Lacan.
Okay. Perfect.
I have such a little small thing to say about Lacan, but you brought me right there. Lacan, French kind of psychologist theorist in the Freud world, got a lot of his own stuff going on, but he talks about Freud and the uncanny. And we're not going to do a whole Lacan. What I want to get into specifically is that Lacan takes it and applies it way more to identity, and how the uncanny. And I started to say this about Ty a little bit, but when you're identity, the idea of the self is unstabilized, destabilized. The mirror stage, I think, is the thing that most people are familiar with, that when you see yourself in a mirror, that's when you realize there's an I, but you can never really connect with it because it's reflected, it's over there, it's flipped, and so you can never really then get back to yourself fully. And so there's always that little bit of distance, but then
the ego is an object rather than a subject.
Right. And so anytime you are forced to think of yourself as other or even more distant from yourself, you become more aware of that. Anytime you become collapsed in with the other, that also does it. And there's something really interesting. I was thinking about it this week with cannibalism specifically. What happens when you consume the other? but the other is another human. So it kind of blurs that. There's like, I don't have a thesis statement here, but it is interesting that this is a show about cannibals. And there's like something even uncanny in that. Like, we need to consume to live, but they're eating other people and like,
yeah, and causing their death.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't have a whole lot, I don't have enough time in the week. I'm not an English major anymore to really think about it, but that's just something, like, if I were teaching class, I'd be like, what do you guys make of this? And then just see what people have to say. So what do you guys, listeners, what do you guys make of this?
Any of our listeners have spent some time studying Lacan, and
if we have any Freud and critical
we haven't even gotten to
here.
Foucault. But
I have such little to say about Foucault right here.
No, I don't think that it's I don't think that it's nearly as connected as Freud and Lacan.
No, but
I was just kind of joking because Foucault is the artist version of like the obsession with Freud and Lacan in other types of storytelling.
He shows up for us too. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But obviously surveillance. I think that's something that you and I are both really interested in.
Yeah.
Even if the show itself doesn't reveal that we are making a documentary, it is in the DNA of this show. And we are watching the show. The women don't know that they're a TV show, but we are watching the show, and so it is being recounted to us. They are being surveilled at all times, no matter what, and we're part of it. Mm-hmm. And that's even a little uncanny, isn't it?
Okay. I think that's good for Freud Corner for now. I'm sure it's not the only time we will visit.
That's all I've got today, though. When I start getting to the stuff where I'm like, I was just thinking about cannibalism, that's kind of uncanny, right?
Right.
That's where we're going to call it for the day.
Right. Yeah. I'm just throwing out the word panopticon, just being like,
what about
that? Panopticon? What about that? Right? The huts are in a circle?
But the huts
are in a circle around
one
the fire.
Of them, and one of them is a circle.
Has a circle opening. I know. We don't need to go there. I know. Okay.
I feel alive right now.
I know. I like go through my bookshelf.
We could, so much of what we've watched in the past, man, we could talk Freud all day in the uncanny with I Saw the TV Glow.
Oh, I know. Okay, so I am going to cut us off with the philosophy talk for the moment. Before we talk about what's next for us, I think we had a couple more emails we wanted to just bring up, say hi to. We've gotten some really lovely, like I said last week, some lovely feedback since our interview with Ashley, not just from new listeners, but from people who've been listening for a while and just, wanted to chime in and be like, hey, no, I'm here. And we really appreciate it. So.
Yeah. For example, just yesterday, we got an email from listener Kylie, who's a new listener. And so thank you, Kylie, but also thank you to the person who mentioned the podcast on Reddit, because
it might have been me.
I found you from someone mentioning your podcast.
Yeah,
on Reddit.
It might have been me. So you're welcome.
Kylie said, I recently did a post on Yellowjackets Hive where I asked everyone their ages. It was cool hearing that several generations are watching from 13 to 75.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
That's so cool. I think that's something you and I should keep in mind when we're a little harsh on people, that there are teenagers listening.
I don't think we're that harsh, but okay.
And so, yeah, it's wild that we're getting to a point. It used to be like if we got one review, we could share it, and then there wouldn't be another one for a few weeks.
For a couple weeks, yeah.
But now we're at a point where we're getting this. Please keep them coming. It's so validating and so encouraging, and it's clearly helping other people learn about the show,
right?
Especially the reviews on Apple Podcasts. So please keep them coming. But it's so exciting that we have too many to share them all on the podcast.
I know,
at this point.
and I also. I said this, I responded to one of the listeners who messaged me and said, like, it feels like we're finding the right people. Mm-hmm. Like, the people that are finding us are the people that we would want to be listening to the podcast because they're like, they have smart takes and they're kind of like thinking about things from a similar perspective maybe as we are. So
yeah, like having fun with it.
Yeah.
Trusting the show, but being thoughtful and not too, it's been really, really fun. I always have fun making this podcast. Yeah. But the last few weeks have been really fun. Like, I don't know.
It's been really nice. I mean, like I think I said this last time, like we're not doing this for any reason other than that it's fun. Like,
well, and to get 10 million subscribers on Patreon. But
Sure.
otherwise...
Right.
Or 10 million listeners so we can launch our Patreon.
Right.
But, otherwise...
Yeah. The next Joe Rogan. Yikes.
We're coming for him,
We're coming for him, yeah.
I just want a Wild Grain sponsorship, Jodie, and a Bombas
I just need those socks.
That's it.
I need
all
more Bombas socks. They're so expensive, but they're so nice.
So please.
Yeah. Get us the socks. No, don't get us the socks. Just hang out.
Just hang out.
Okay. So we should talk about what we're doing next because I'm pretty excited about it. I think that it's a really good follow-up to this season. I think it hopefully will keep us engaged and thinking about media in the same way we have been. So do you want to give people a heads up?
Yeah, I think you can tell if you look at our back catalog. It's like each season we start pretty focused and then let ourselves wander a bit as we start to have fun, and then we refocus.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So we are refocusing in our off-season plans. We're going to cover some movies. Mm-hmm. And we're going to start with some really specific, directly referenced movies in Yellowjackets. I said that so backwards.
Yeah. So we are looking at, there's a bunch of lists floating around of films referenced in Yellowjackets, some just on the shelf in Van's video store, some more like mentioned in the dialogue or in the plot. And so we're going to kind of work from that list loosely. Also introducing a couple of other movies that have been either referenced in the pitch deck or are just so clearly connected that we can't not watch them. But so it's basically our like Yellowjackets connected movies, which is what we did before, but we did it from the perspective of our watching history. And now we're doing it from the perspective of the actual canon in the show, of like what they are referencing, what they are looking at, what they're referring to through the characters. So I'm very excited. Should we tell them what our first one's going to be?
Genuinely so excited. I think we nailed it with this first pick.
Oh, me too. I'm so psyched. So this isn't referenced in the show, but we could not watch Heavenly Creatures.
Right. It's first of all referenced in the pitch deck.
It's Melanie Lynskey. It's iconic.
I mean,
it's going to be amazing.
And yeah, if you don't know, Heavenly Creatures, it's
1994.
It's Peter Jackson directed.
Yep.
It's not just, it's Melanie Lynskey, of course, but it's also Kate Winslet.
Right.
It's like do you call that a biopic? I guess it's a biopic. Let's see.
It's based on a murder case.
Right.
Yeah. I think biopic sounds nicer than like what it
actually is. Yeah. That's
it's
a good
based
point.
on the Parker Hill murder case, examines the relationship between two teenage girls, which culminates in the premeditated killing of one of their mothers. It's a it's a period piece. It was released in 94. It's supposed to take place in the 50s. But all you need to know is it's fucking Melanie Lynskey. It's her big screen debut. I think it's also Kate Winslet's debut for feature films. How could we not start with this? I've been wanting to talk about it on this podcast for a while. There's a bunch of stuff that we just hadn't gotten to in our movie section. So we're going to start here, and then we're going to continue to go through the movies that have had a part in this show that we love so much.
I'm so excited.
Me too. So the movie is not as accessible as we would like it to be, but it is on the Internet Archive. It is up on YouTube a couple of different times in its full length.
Yeah, I'll link to the Internet Archive version specifically in our show notes.
Yeah. And then,
which, if you don't know, I mean, you just watch it in a browser. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
It's a totally fine place to watch it. There's no reason for us to be being a little. I don't know why I'm disappointed that you can watch it easily for free. That was weird, but yeah, so you can watch it on the Internet Archive.
So it is viewable, but it's just not going to be as high quality as if it were streaming.
No,
on
but it's also
streamers.
a movie from 1994.
94,
so,
yeah. Right.
You'll be fine.
So also, if you speak Spanish, there's a subtitled Spanish version excuse me, there's a version on YouTube that is subtitled in Spanish.
Cool.
So
That's fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be next week. Each week we will update you with the movie for the next week. So you can watch along with us if you'd like. Most of them won't be this hard to get your hands on, but we have to start here. There's just no other way.
It's not hard to get your hands on. I'm going to link to it. You'll click the link. You'll watch it in your browser. You'll be fine.
Right.
So
that's fair.
You just you can't pay for it if you want to. You have to watch it for free. I'm so sorry.
Right. So yeah, that is our plan. So we will keep you updated as to what's coming next week. Heavenly Creatures. Yeah. We will hang out with Mother Melanie Linsky.
That's right.
In her younger days. And I cannot fucking wait.
I'm so excited. I hope folks will stick around. I understand if you're just here for Yellowjackets, but we're going to have fun.
Yeah, we always do. And if you're not sure, we've got a back catalog of other movies and TV shows we've covered. If you're like, they're not going to talk about Heathers right now. But guess what we did?
That's right. And
guess what? Legend of Billie Jean. Guess what? Radio Flyer.
Start with Radio Flyer.
The back catalog has some good and weird choices in it.
And some fun guests. We tend to be a little more guest forward in the off seasons because you and I have too much to say about Yellowjackets to bring people on. I think we've had Chris Gethard and Josh Gondelman during the season otherwise because you and I get a little
mouthy.
Yeah. Stick around because we'll probably have some cool people joining us over the next few months.
So yeah, we hope you'll stay with us. We hope we get a season 4 and I think that's going to do it for us this week. Where can they find us, Andrea?
We're at WatchersPodNJ on Instagram, WatchersPodNJ at Gmail.
Yeah, send us an email. Tell us or send us a message on Instagram. Tell us what your plane would look like.
That's right.
Yeah, what's in the plane? And they can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM. As I said last week, it is my art account. It has nothing to do with Yellowjackets, so come on over if you like fiber arts. Otherwise, no offense taken.
But Jodie's always making cool shit. And as I said last week, she's a good follow. I'm at AQ Andrea Q. It's just my dog and my cats.
Which are also very much worth seeing.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you next week in the 50s.
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand with Melanie Linsky.
That's right.
What could be better?